deposition and went to.
Welcome to the board meeting of the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians. This meeting is being held Friday, November 22nd, 2019, at the Department of Consumer Affairs, 1625 North Market Boulevard, Hearing Room South, 102, Sacramento, California, 95834. I would like to call this meeting to order. Part of calling this meeting to order today includes the Pledge of Allegiance. Could I please ask everyone to stand and join us in the pledge as led by my fellow board member and military veteran, Paul Sellers.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You. During the meeting today, public comment is welcome on any agenda item, as the item is taken up by the board. Under the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, the board may not take any action on issues raised by public comment that are not on the agenda, other than to decide whether to schedule that issue for a future meeting. If any person wishes to address the board, please come forward to the podium. It is helpful if you state your name, the name of the organization you represent. Please note that a person wishing to provide general comment is not required to identify him or herself when making public comment. However, it is appreciated. To allow board sufficient time to conduct its scheduled business, the board may limit the time given to each person who wishes to comment. Please keep your comments focused and relevant to the applicable agenda item and directed to the board. Please do not repeat statements or views of a previous speaker. It is sufficient to state that you agree. Written statements should be summarized and submitted to the board and not read. If I forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, it is not because I intend to limit comment. Please raise your hand and I will recognize you. The board appreciates your cooperation and assistance in meeting its legal mandate. I would like to thank the board members for the work yesterday and appreciate your dedication to the board and your service to the protection of the public. I'm Tammy Mendoza, current board president and LVN member. If I could have the board members please introduce themselves, starting on my far left.
Good morning, my name is Paul Sellers. I'm a psychiatric technician member.
Good morning, John Deerking, public member.
Good morning, Paula Amazola, public member.
Good morning. I'm Bernice Baster Martinez. I'm a public member and also vice president of the board.
Good morning, Alita Carpenter, public member.
Good morning, Cheryl Turner, public member.
Good morning. Dr. Carol Mountain, education member.
And we have one more board member who will be joining us around 10, and that's Mr. Ken Maxey. If, at this time, if we could have the executive officer introduce herself and staff present, please.
Thank you, Madam President. Elaine Yamaguchi, BBNPT Executive Officer. As is our custom for a Sacramento meeting, we've brought quite a number of our staff here, so let me see if I can do this by program area. First, the education team is almost entirely here, so that would be Sue Ellen Clareworth, our SNEC Marie Cordero, Jeff Durham, Cindy Fairchild, Jessica Gomez, Geraldine Marcino, Tim Matsumoto, Arlene Nunez, Ann Schumann, and Margarita Valdez. If you could stand up and wave howdy. I think it's noteworthy that only NEC's Faye Silverman and Beth DeYoung aren't here today, but otherwise we have team education all in the house. So from team admin over here to my left, we have Amy Nguyen and Vicky Saavedra. Yay. Our enforcement chief, Candace Rainey, and our discipline manager, Jay Prouty. And scattered around here, of course, the licensing evaluation led by Jen Johnson, our manager, Ivan Brent, our supervisor. We have Catherine Reed, Chris Perlow, Alicia Smalls, and Renda Mias. Hi, guys. And running in and out of the meeting because she's taking care of some disasters back at the building is our AEO, Vicki Lyman. She's right in the back room now. And that's everyone here today, I think.
Then Ken, if we could have you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Madam President. Kenneth L. Swenson, Senior Staff Counsel Attorney 3, General Counsel to the Board.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the board staff for the work they do. We could not be able to accomplish what we accomplish without their help. Thank you. We'll go on to agenda item 11, board meeting minutes. Review and approval of the August 23rd board meeting minutes and October 30th special board meeting minutes.
Actually, that's
August 9th?
16.
Which one?
August 16, 17, 18. Should be 16,
Oh,
not 23rd.
August.
well, they wrote 23rd, oops.
Yeah.
So,
August?
excuse me, it's the August 16th.
So the minutes are correct. It's the agenda has the wrong date. I apologize.
August.
Is there,
Madam President, I move that we approve the August 16, 17, 2019 minutes, and that that correction also go in today's agenda.
Is there a second? Okay, I second it.
Carol?
Thank you.
Cheryl Turner.
And Bernice, that was for both the August and the October?
No, ma'am, it was
Just the
only for
August?
August
Okay.
16th to the 17th,
It's actually only the 16th.
with also the understanding that it would be corrected for today's agenda,
Okay, thank you.
because it's a public record.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to approve the August 16th through 17th.
If I may, it wasn't the 17th, it's only the 16th. That was the Friday, if I'm not mistaken.
The 16th?
I believe so. Could you? Yeah, I know, but it was just the 16th, correct? Thank you.
Okay.
Accept the friendly amendment. Thank you.
So motion to move to approve the August 16th board meeting minutes and the correction to go on to the agenda. It was motion by Bernice, second by Cheryl. Is there any comment needed by board members? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Madam
Oh,
President,
sorry.
public comment, please.
Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Madam President, I move that we approve the October 30th, 2019 minutes.
Second.
So there is a motion on the floor to approve the October 30th, 2019 board meeting minutes. It was motioned by Bernice, second by Alita. Is there any discussion by board members? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Motion carries. Then we'll go on to the Education Committee report, recommendation and possible actions. Carol?
The board met in October to review some schools. The committee will meet again in January. Further.
That's it? Okay. And then we will go on to the Education Division report. If we could have Marie come up.
Well,
Good morning. So you have my education report dated November 8th. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Board members, do you have any questions?
none at this time.
No questions? I would like to just point out one thing, that you've been hearing a lot about our Skype directors forums, and we had them, yay, and we had 4 of them, and we had about 112 attendees, and the program directors loved it. They said they didn't have to fight parking, they didn't have to get a day off from work, they didn't have to travel, and overall, it was a really, really good forum, and I'd like to thank Beth DeYoung, who spearheaded the directors' forums, and all the NECs who worked so hard to get their presentations together and to make it work. We did have a few little technical challenges, which we were able to work out, but it was marvelous. So I did want to point that out because I think you've been hearing about that, or I've been talking about it, and we will have more next year too.
Madam President, may I?
Yes.
Just want to commend the education group on making this happen. You've been talking about this for some time, and as a board member, I'm sure my colleagues agree, we're thrilled that you've been able to start this, and we've heard from some directors. They appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. So we're on 13B, consideration of placement on provisional approval. And we will, 13B1 is Curram College. Jessica Gomez. Huh?
You're jumping all over.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Jessica. The board members have the report and information. Do board members have any questions for Jessica?
Yes, I wasn't sure if you were able to make the supplemental report. I know you were about to go on vacation, and I know that there was a time constraint. If you did, I didn't see it in here.
If you look at the bottom of the report, there is a addendum on the bottom of the report.
Okay.
And yes, I did.
Very good.
And during that time, we got our pass rates back, and his pass rates went from 69% to 83% for the quarter only. But for the average annual, it went from 63 to 66%, which leaves him still 13 percentage points below the state.
Okay.
He did submit the information for a class. He does have the resources for it, but at the same time, the day after our meeting, while I was going through his preparation and his, his response to the violations, I did contact them. I asked them for the information regarding the students who had not taken their prerequisites, because when we were there, none of them had taken the prerequisites. What he sent me was a forms for each student stating they had completed it that day. There was no signature for any of the students signing it, where there was a space on the form for the students to sign. The next day, I contacted him again and I said, I need transcripts showing when they completed the courses. He sent me a form again showing that every student got a B for all 3 classes. And he did have some dates on there, but every student had a B. That seemed just a little bit odd to me, that every student in the class would get a B for those 3 classes on all of them. So Elaine Yamaguchi, Marie Cordero, and myself went over to the school to look at the files to make sure of exactly what had gone on with this. And in looking at the files, there was one file that had absolutely no indication that the classes had been made up. We found transcripts on 7 of the students, I believe, who had received grades from other colleges, and some of them were C's and some of them were A's, but they had just been moved down to B's. And then in his transcripts of his students, a couple of them had gotten A's on the classes, and the information we got were B's. So again, the information that we got from them was false or incorrect. And so in looking at that, I still cannot recommend a class for this program, because I feel like they really need to look at their policies, their procedures, and their information so that they know what they're submitting to the board and that they're submitting the correct information.
May we inquire if the school director or representative wants to respond to that?
Carol?
May I inquire if the school director would like to respond to those allegations? Is that appropriate now, Ms. President?
We can have them come up. Is there a representative from the school?
Need a recommendation from the staff, and then call the school. Staff recommendation.
So if we could have your name, your title, and then we'll have the staff give us their recommendation. And then after the staff gives us a recommendation, if you could let us know whether or not you agree with the recommendation.
Well, good morning, everyone. I feel it's a pleasure to be in your company this morning, however, not for the reason that we are here. It could be on better circumstances, would be great. My name is Dr. Williams. I am the president and program director for Currum College of Nursing. And I guess I do want to respond to some of the
Okay, if you
the
could
report for the...
hold on a minute so
Go
we
ahead.
could get the recommendation from the NEC first.
Yes, I did receive the recommendation.
No, if we could get the recommendation from our NEC.
Okay, the recommendation stands as from the Education Committee to place Currum College on provisional for a 2-year period of time starting today. Issue a notice of the change of approval status. Deny the program director's request to admit a class of 20 students starting on December 9th. Require the program to admit no additional classes without prior approval. Require the program to correct the remaining violations identified and submit the document of correction no later than December 15th. require the program to submit a report in 6 months and no later than May 22nd of 2020, and 18 months later, no later than May 2020, 2021. And the report has a long list of information that I would like to have. Number 7 is to require the program to provide no less than 1 instructor for every 10 students in the clinical experience. Require the program to comply with all approved standards of Article 4 of the Vocational Nursing Practice and Article 5 of the board's regulation commencing at California Code of Regulations, Title 16, Section 2526. Require the program to demonstrate incremental progress in correcting the violations, and the program fails to satisfactorily demonstrate incremental progress. The full board may revoke the program's approval and place the program on the November 2021 agenda for reconsideration of provisional approval.
Thank you. And if, from the school, if we could have you tell us whether or not you agree with the recommendation?
Well, I agree with some of the recommendations, some I don't. For instance, here in one of the recommendations require that no less than 1 instructor for every 10 students. We have never had any more than 10 students with 1 instructor in the clinical. You know, the documentation is there for that. All of our contracts that we have with all of our facilities clearly state no more than 10 students. So we've been in compliance with that since day 1. And so that's just a minor thing compared to some of the other things in the reports. So there are some things that I did want to address. I wanted to address the grade issue with the transcripts. I'm under the understanding, there are some educators on the board, they would probably know this, that generally when a course comes in from another school, it's a transfer credit. There's no weight given to it. There's no grade given to it. The transcript just shows that it was a transfer in. And, you know, when I asked, I had a meeting afterwards and I asked them about, you know, how do you deal with the transfers? And they said, well, that's a school policy. You can decide to give it a grade, or you can decide to just give it a transfer. Okay, the school, the passing grade is 75%, and you know we gave them the B and weighted in. We did give them the weight to keep their GPA, giving them the credit for not only completing the course somewhere else, but also giving them the weight that went with the B. We had a visit, and you know the EO came out as well as the supervising NEC and Jessica. And they reviewed the files. Yes, they did. And the EO asked me when I could have these corrected. And that was a Friday. And I told her by Monday. And by Monday, they were corrected, and they were in that office. What we did was we went back. We looked at the transcripts. We clearly indicated on the transcript that it was a transfer credit and where it came from. And so we corrected that immediately. And that's our misunderstanding because, you know, again, if it's policy, you give a credit or you not give a credit. I know on my own personal transcripts, whenever I did a course somewhere else, it just says transfer credit, no weight, no grade. So that has been corrected. And we reviewed all the other files to make sure that we went back and we made those corrections too, because that was an issue.
Cheryl, you had a question?
I think Ms. Gomez wanted to respond.
Needs to speak in the mic.
My concern was when I asked for the information, it was not submitted to me correctly the first time. And in the records of his own file students, when we got there, we asked him, how come everyone got a B on all of these classes? And he says, well, we just give everyone a B for the classes. But in his records, he had students who did have A's in the pharmacology course that that's in his records of the students having A's, but the information he gave us was that they were B's. One student's file lacked any information whatsoever that they had taken these courses. So to me, it was very it was the same thing over again from what had happened when we had asked the information previously about how he was going to improve his program, and he did not follow that. And so to me, it was just, again, getting false information or information that was not correct from the school.
Madam President, may I? Yes. I notice you have other staff with you, sir. Do you want to make sure we know who's present with you?
Thank you. John Vertito. I'm one of the instructors on the program.
Okay, thank you. When you introduced yourself, you said you are the president. Are you also the director of the program as well? What other roles do you hold in this program?
I am basically the owner and program director, and I only teach probably 25-30% most. I do teach some classes in the program, but that's it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, owner, president, director, as well as faculty.
Well, it's, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's my understanding that a program director can have teaching responsibilities up to a particular percent, which my understanding was always 30%. I'm not in the classroom a lot.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand all of the responsibilities you're undertaking
Well,
at this time.
I also have two vice presidents that basically split up the work. I mean, there's another one who's doing some administrative, doing grades, doing attendance. I have another one who's doing, student affairs type things. So I don't have all the responsibility on my shoulder. Ultimately, I have all the responsibility on my shoulder, but I have other people around me that are there working.
I raised the question because if all of those responsibilities are on your plate, I'm a little confused about who's responsible for issues of transcripts, grades, public record of students. And I'm wondering if during a visit, there was not opportunity to talk to the exact individuals, which would lead to some confusion about where are things kept, how are things recorded. And unfortunately, when there is a visit, whoever gives information, that becomes the foundation on which decisions are made. From my perspective, just listening, it sounds as if all the information came directly from you, whether it was your responsibility or not, and not should you understand every detail that all those others do, but in the response, it became the foundation on which decisions were made. You mentioned having corrected transcripts, et cetera, over the weekend. When did staff receive the formal notice of those corrections?
I sent them to them on Monday. I forwarded them to on Monday, as I said I would. So
And I was on
Monday,
vacation for 2
November,
weeks.
this Monday, or because also there is the issue of getting information in front of staff in time so that we as board members can read the corrections. We don't see any of those corrections, and so the question becomes the timeliness of the receipt of that information to staff so they can notify us of some changes.
If you remember right, I was going on vacation, and I held off until we got this part done. I did not get the report back from him until I returned from vacation. The report had to be to legal prior to me getting the information back. I did as much as I could, like I promised I would at the Education Committee. So the corrections
And
did
I
not
do
make it
have to
here,
correct, I
but
was not part of the Education Committee. That's
Yeah.
why I'm asking.
yeah. Well, you guys asked me to do this, and I explained at that time I would not be available for most of the time.
Yes. Sir, now you were aware that there were time constraints to get us information for us to consider at this board meeting, and that Ms. Gomez was going on vacation, and you asked us if we would consider expediting a report so that we would be able to, give you another opportunity to submit the requested information to satisfy your violations. And it sounds as though that the information was not turned in timely, you feel that it was turned in timely?
I know it was
And-
turned in
And that
timely.
it's still not, you're still not in compliance?
I know it's timely because I have all of the emails that went back and forth between Ms. Gomez, Jessica Gomez and I. And, I come back down here and, she had, in the first email I submitted on October the 9th, I submitted some of the documentation. She wrote me back and she said, I still need the clinical placements prior to being able to make a decision. I gave her the submissions. October the 11th, they were finished. So October the 11th, they were finished. She acknowledged they were finished. Friday, October the 11th, she sent me an email. She said, this is really cutting it close for me. I will still have to evaluate the classroom placements. And then the last email that I received from her on the Friday was basically there was not enough time to finish. Although all the documentation was submitted, there wasn't enough time to complete the request. So,
If you remember what I said at first, I did evaluate the information, and there is adequate faculty and facilities for the placement. It's my concern about getting the information correctly from the school. And this is twice that I've gotten information that was not correct from the school. And I'm more concerned that the school looks at their policies and understands what it is that they have as policies and that they can submit information to the board accurately, rather than having a class right now.
Madam President, I want to ask the chair of the Education Committee, what was the committee's recommendation to the board?
The committee's recommendation was to follow the recommendation of the NEC.
Okay.
Thank you.
So at this moment, we have a motion that came out of the committee to follow the NEC's recommendation. Do board members have any further questions or comments or discussion needed?
Just a clarification question, if I may,
Okay.
Madam President, of our NEC. You've heard the representative from the school. Does that change your opinion or conclusion?
No, it does not.
If I may, Madam Chair,
Yes?
Ms. Gomez, did your recommendation change at all as a result of the information submitted after the last Education Committee meeting?
No, the information that I got from them was that they had the information, but again, they gave me some more inaccurate information, which solidified in my mind the recommendations.
Thank you.
Paula?
Yeah. So I'm just trying to understand. So the information, the first set of information was not sufficient to change the recommendation,
No.
but then subsequent information was?
No.
No, I'm not.
No.
Okay.
Initially, the information that caused me to bring this to you, was that he had sent me I had requested information on how the school was going to bring up their pass rates. He had given me very specific information on how he was going to do that. In that, it included that the students would take an admission exam, and that he would accept no one with an exam less than 75%. None of the students met the 75% that he admitted. Some of them were at 21, 23, 25%. There was most of them were deemed as developmental in their scores. He had stated that he was going to do a training for his staff, which had not been done. He had stated all of these things that he was going to do to bring up his pass rates. Not one of them was done. And Ms. Cordero and I made a site visit and went through the student records, and that's how we identified that he had the information that he had given me as to what he was going to do to bring up the pass rates was never implemented. And so this is the reason why we took him to the Education Committee, because his pass rates had not gone up. He had admitted students who were obviously put into a program that they probably would not be able to excel in. Now, he has done tutoring after we told him that, the tutoring hadn't been done because we asked, and so he has implemented the tutoring. He did finally, he was supposed to have a class for the students prior to starting the program that was for critical thinking and how to study and how to learn. After our visit, he did have someone come from outside of the school and present that, but this was in September. The class started in June. And so what he had promised us that he was going to do to bring up the pass rates, he did not do. That's why I initially brought him, and that he did not, and that I did not feel he should have a class at that time. Because of this issue, he needed to spend the time with the students that he admitted who were definitely did not meet his admission criteria, bring them up and work with them, and then possibly get a class. And then after the request that I got at the Education Committee to look at his pass rates and to see if he could get a class, when I did ask for additional information, it came to me erroneously again, and so that just solidified my, yes, he does have the faculty, the facility to have a class. His pass rates came up 3 percentage points, but I don't feel like it's adequate to give him a class.
If we hear you correctly, the school has not provided the appropriate information. And I think legal ascertained that. You mentioned it again, and this is the third time.
This is the second time.
Well, just in our discussion,
Oh, yes.
this is the third time that has been affirmed.
Yes.
All right, so the effect of your recommendation is that the school will not be able to take in a class for the end of this year, but will still be in business and will be, but under provisional, meaning that there'll be more oversight going forward.
Exactly.
Okay.
Can I just clarify that the test scores that you talked about where the students were, you said some of them were like in the 20s, that was the students that were supposed to be coming into the class he wants to start?
No, this was his class that he started after he sent me the information of how he would bring up his pass rates. He sent me the information or the plan of bringing up his pass rates, and these are the students that he admitted after he had sent me the plan.
But in the future, will the school be giving a test to verify that the students are ready to come into the program?
If I may, Madam President. Dr. Williams, John Vertudo, I'm one of the senior instructors. Since the meeting, I have noticed and witnessed that Dr. Williams is actively following the recommendations from the board and addressing the violations 1 and 2 in the report. So he is following the board's guideline, and we're following our own admission criteria. My focus is primarily in the classroom, and we are working hard to get the students prepared not only for the boards, but for reality and actually providing patient care. Obviously, it's an uphill battle because the students may not be as well qualified to to be nurses, and so we're working on their success to give them the education they need in order to be a professional nurse that's safe and competent and pass the NCLEX. That's always been the goal of the schools, to get the students the education they're paying for and to fill the ranks of the working nursing force that they're safe, competent, and professional. On the faculty side, we are spending the time and the effort to get them in that position. If the students had met all the criteria, our job would be a lot easier. But we're still, as faculty, we are dedicated to our students' success, and we are trying our very best. We have been bringing up the quarterly reports. I'm proud to say that our students are doing better. Regrettably, it is affecting the annual report, which is what's being evaluated, and as rightly so, we need to be put on probation. But the probation we're looking at is an opportunity to really focus on the needs of our students to make them successful. That is the gauge, the state that the regulations require, and we're focusing on that on the faculty side. Violations 1 or 2 are primarily on admin, but it affects on the trickle down, it affects the quality of the students and the quality of education we have to provide, and we're working. Being in your shoes, I know exactly what you're thinking, and being on this side is not a comfortable position. But I am also very cognizant that Jessica is doing her job, you're doing ours, and we have not been doing ours. And we are working on the faculty side to correct that. Our first indicator is we've been steadily rising in our pass rates on the quarter. The goal is to get it back on the annual. And we are working with that regard and addressing it actively. It's not easy, but Dr. Williams does give us the tools necessary. You can tell from the report, we are well stocked. The buildings are clean, they're well maintained, our labs are well stocked, we have quality clinical sites, and we have quality instructors. And we are working diligently to address our students' needs. But it is an uphill because some of them are ESL, and we are overcoming that. We are spending time to improve their professional skills. We're spending time to make sure they understand the concepts. And Dr. Williams is actively participating and leading the effort in tutoring. We're all tutor, but he's spending time on his weekend to help the students come in. And he's getting very good attendance at that level. And we're seeing our grades come up. Students' confidences are going up, and we're all succeeding. We're hoping that we have, when we come see you, and I'm setting this up for your February meeting, we hope to have good reports on our pass rates to be able to ask you for a class. We are confident that we will meet the goal to get us back up and to get back our qualification, get off provisional as soon as possible. And we realize the only way to do that is meet the benchmarks mandated by the state regulations. And that's what we're shooting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica, I have one question. So the students that are in the 20s were ones that were, and I understand after he sent you the report saying that they would not accept anybody below that, but were they already accepted to the class, or did the class start before he sent you that report?
The class started 2 months after I got the report.
Okay, thank you. Do other board members have questions?
Just for clarification, Madam President, I'd like to address Mr. Vertito or Dr. Williams. You've heard the discussions here. Would you characterize the condition of the school programming? Would you consider it substantive or technical as far as purported violations?
Let you answer that.
You want to?
I'll let you answer it.
Mr. Durkin, I'm a teacher. My job is in the classroom, and I deal with the students. The violations in report, specifically sections 1 and 2, are on the administrative side. I have no control on who comes into the classroom, but once they're admitted into the school, it comes into the purview as a teacher to give as much education and make sure they understanding and can comprehend and, more importantly, implement that understanding in the care that our students provide in a learning environment that's safe and competent for our patients. I cannot speak to the testing. I cannot speak to the admission criteria. That's established by both the board and the school's policy. And being a teacher, I get who he admits. And I can vouch that ever since that the meeting with Jessica and Marie, I wasn't here when you came, Elaine, he's been doing everything possible to meet the criteria because I wasn't aware of the state. But as a result of that meeting, I became very aware and have been asked to give my recommendation. The recommendation is this: become compliant. We have no choice because that is the contract we signed with the students, and that's what we're being held accountable for, and we weren't.
Do you see, Mr. Vertito, upward momentum or progress as far as becoming fully compliant?
We are, but we dug ourselves a pretty big hole, and it's going to take some time to dig us back out. There are financial considerations that it's the school's problem that we have to deal with. But our biggest concern, and my personal biggest concern, is the integrity and the relationship between the board and the school. If we're at fault for sending incorrect information, Dr. Williams has recognized it, we've talked about it, and he's working hard to correct it. And for that, I apologize because my own reputation is tied for the school, and I believe we have to be upfront to both the students and to you because you're our oversight to make sure we meet the standards. And educationally, we are. Dr. Williams gives us the tools to be successful. I'm sorry to say that some of the tools may not be the best quality, but we're doing the very best we can to make sure that we meet standards. And we are trying very hard.
Am I allowed to say anything else?
May I ask a follow-up question, Madam President? Because I was not privy to the Education Committee's discussion. Dr. Williams, do you have a way to remediate the Ts and the results?
Yeah, we have I want to address that as a testing, what have you, because in the report, it shows that it indicates that I had no plan for doing any test-taking skills or anything for the students, yet the documentation, I was looking for a particular person to come who has a good reputation. I sent an email to the board showing that I was dealing with that particular person prior to the starting of my April class. However, because of her schedule, she wasn't able to come until September. I submitted documentation to the board showing that I paid for that service in August. So this was before they came to visit. Unfortunately, timing didn't quite work out, but the students did get it. She didn't want the instructors to be included, and I convinced her to let the instructors, because I believe the instructors should know what strategies were being spoken to the student. To speak to the TEAS testing, currently, last week on Wednesday, we had 5 people that came in and did the TEAS testing. 4 of them were proficient, one of them the developmental, and of course we haven't sent anything out yet to students. We're doing TEAS testing. We have 4 TEAS testers scheduled again for next Wednesday, so we are implementing it. And we sat with the NECs and we looked at the scoring for the TEAS test with ATI, where maybe you should take somebody and where maybe you should say no. You need some additional remediation or other types of courses, what have you, before you come try nursing. So we are doing that. We did develop an admission matrix, which we submitted to the board, which based on points, was based on, are your prerequisites done? Do we have transcripts for them? Do we have the high school transcripts? Do we have all these things so we can make a decision? So we have made the changes on there. I know that I'm trying to put a whole bunch in here, but I'm looking at the progress that we've made this year, and I'm looking at the pass rates. And if you look at the chart, you're going to see, you know what? January was dismal, 53%. Dismal. You look at the following April to June, we went from 53 to 69%. Last quarter, we went from 69 to 83.33. We got to be doing something right in order to have our pass rates move in that direction. With the number of students that we have already tested in this quarter, of course, we're not allowed to share that information because, again, you can't, without students, we're going to exceed it again. And I believe that once the pass rates come in, or we're finished in 6 weeks from now, we're going to be in compliance. And I'm saying, like, for 6 weeks, I mean, when I'm driving here this morning, I'm thinking, could they not defer this until we get the pass rates for the end of the year, come back in the February meeting and say, fine, we didn't get it. But I firmly believe that we're going to get it. So for 6 weeks down the road, I end up coming in with the yearly required, then what happens? So to answer your question, yes, we have instituted the teeth test. We're doing tutoring. The tutoring sessions we're doing, give them the option that they can come half hour at lunchtime if they want to. But my Saturday tutoring, in that particular class right now, there's 16 people in the class. There's 16 people there on Saturday for tutoring. And so whatever Mr. Rotito and the other instructors are covering through the week, on Saturday I'm there to make sure that they understand the concepts of what we're taught in class. Any questions need to be answered. And the grades, the grades within the program have gone up significantly since we started that. And I did provide some evaluations to the NEC from the students that are participating in those things. So I hope I answered your question.
Dr. Williams, is the tutoring you're doing tutoring students who are taking the T's or want to raise their T scores?
We're doing both. We're doing test-taking strategies. We're doing math problems on the board. We're doing English language, sort of sentence structuring and that type of stuff. So we're doing that. It's about 4 hours that they're coming for Saturday.
Well, let me share with you that some schools are using, it's through Edmentum, Edmentum. It's a 27-hour self-paced online program for students. I believe that it's called Higher Education and Career Readiness, and that it's been very successful for students who are trying to increase their TEAS test scores. I personally have seen our students raise their test scores 10 points when they've gone and reviewed this. So it just might be something that you might want to check into as a way that students can do that on their own time.
Thank you.
He's consulting now.
Paula? Hi, yes. I have a couple questions. If I remember correctly, at the Education Committee and today, there's been just a brief conversation about the financial implications with this recommendation. And given the board has dealt with, in the past, schools who have closed due to a variety of reasons, but one I'm sure is financial. Where does the school stand when it comes to, someone mentioned it today about financial, like if you don't take in a class, is there a problem with the school closing or the school like further down implications for the current students?
No, the school will not close. The school is financially stable. It will not close. We have experience with that. When Brightwood closed down, we took 20 of their students to help them through. When Okios University closed down in Oakland, we took 6 students who drove every single day from Oakland. No, the school is fine. So we understand the implications of what happens with students who end up with transcripts where they get no credit for them whatsoever. We understand that. It's just that, with every owner, and corporation, what have you, Everybody just likes to have that little extra cushion there in the event that something happens. But no, the school is financially stable.
Madam President, call for the question.
May I ask one last question?
Paul?
Yeah.
Ms. Gomez, one more time, has any of the discussion that's transpired, particularly the idea of a deferral, has that changed your opinion at all?
No, I believe that the school should go on provisional approval and not defer it because of the information that they provided to us that was so inaccurate. Our regulation specifically states that, just a minute, let me get to it here. It specifically states a material misrepresentation of fact by a vocational nursing program in any information submitted to the board is cause for denial or revocation of approval or provisional approval. I've had this twice now, that he has submitted information that was misrepresentation of the fact of what's going on in the school. I consider that very serious, and it makes me worry about any information that I'm getting from the school. I will have to really watch the school very, very closely to make sure that what he's telling us is exactly what's going on. Being on provisional approval is the only way I can really do that. As far as the class, I really feel like the students that he is working with needs to continue getting the very handheld education that they're getting because they were brought in at such a level. I'm not going to say they're not going to become nurses. I'm going to say they need extra help because of the level that they were at when they were admitted into the program. I believe not getting the class right now will help these students a long ways, get it, to be able to become a professional nurse if they do make it. So my recommendation definitely stays the same.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the motion is to follow the recommendations from the NEC report. And that came from the Education Committee, so we do not need a second. So we've had discussion. Any public comment? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Alita?
Yes, Mr. Maxey is here also.
Yeah.
Cannot vote. You cannot vote.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol? Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. And if I could have the Education Committee place this school on their agenda at their next upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Los Angeles Job Corps.
Okay. So we'll take a 10-minute break, and we will come back at 10:22. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and get back started. We are on agenda item 13B2, Los Angeles Job Corps. If we can have the NEC, Cindy Fairchild, thank you. We've received your report, and we're going to turn it over to the Education Committee.
The Education Committee met and reviewed Los Angeles Job Corps program, and after listening to the recommendations of the NEC, Dr. Cindy Fairchild, we support the decisions of the NEC.
So if I understand you correctly, the recommendation, the motion is from the Education Committee to recommend to follow the NEC's recommendations.
That is correct.
Thank you. Is there a representative from Los Angeles Job Corps
There is
present?
not. They were not able to be here today.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions for the NEC?
Yes, I have a question. All right, so I I know that we received a letter from,
Talking to the mic.
yeah, thank you. I know that we received a letter from them that you presented from the directors and owners
Yes.
of the school at the last meeting, the Education Committee meeting. Have they submitted anything to you since then?
Yes, I actually called them before I came up here to make sure. They do have a job proposal out. They're expecting the background check to come through today. So hopefully by the time I get home this evening, I will have an answer from them. They,
Is the job proposal for a director? Is that?
Yes.
Thank you.
sorry. And they have implemented the ATI products for review, and they are continuing to submit, the instructor is continuing to submit what he is doing and working with the students. I have that through the end of the year when they go on Christmas break.
All right. And you said you learned this through a telephone call?
Yes.
And when was that call?
Let's say Wednesday.
Were they able to adjust? They were having trouble with their pediatric and maternal child clinicals. Was that resolved at all?
They have not done anything with that. They were waiting until they could hire a director to take that role on.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do any other board members have any questions?
Just to confirm, all of the information you received since, has that affected your written recommendation?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess I'm a little confused here. They have 30 students currently enrolled. They have no clinical sites?
13 students.
Or even 13 students with no approved clinical sites?
No, they have approved clinical sites. The one that they were wanting to use was not approved for the term. They do not have enough OB and PEDS clinical sites for the number of students.
Okay, how are they gonna proceed without the appropriate clinical sites? What's gonna happen in the short term to these 13 students?
They have suspended the program. Los Angeles Job Corps, the students actually live on campus.
Okay,
So the students are still on campus. The instructor is continuing to work with the students on remediation, skills, pharmacology, anatomy, physiology, and they meet every day just to continue reviewing and keeping the students engaged. Once they get the director on, their first thing is going to be to go through and check all of the clinic sites and make sure they have the appropriate clinic sites for the
13 students.
for the program. And then they will be restarting in January with their second term.
In January, okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board members? So we have a motion and a second, a motion that came out of Education Committee to accept the NEC's recommendation. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Carol? Yes. Carol?
Yes.
So motion carries. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we'll move on to 13C. 13C1, Angelus Institute, Artesia. Cindy, thank you for your report. We've received it and read it. Do any board members have any questions for the NEC? Seeing none, is there a representative from Angelus Institute, Artesia? If we could have your name and title and whether or not you agree with the NEC's recommendation?
Brandy Coward, Director of Nursing. I do agree.
The mic.
Can we have you turn it on and talk into the mic? Thank you.
Brandy Coward, Director of Nursing. I do agree.
Thank you. Do board members have any comments or questions for the representative from the school? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I would so move to accept the NEC's report and adopt the recommendations.
Second.
So, John, is there any discussion needed from board members? Seeing none. Any public comment? Seeing none. So the motion is to accept NEC's report and adopt the recommendation made by John, second by Ken. We'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to 13C2, Integrity College of Health, Pasadena. Jessica Gomez, if you could come up. Thank you, Jessica. We've received your report and recommendations. Do any board members have questions for the NEC?
I have to make an amendment on the report. On the 12th of November, Marie Cordero received an email from the Bureau of Post-Secondary Education, which states application 32023, renewal of operation of accredited institution, was denied on 11/8/19. The school has the option to contest the denial by submitting a written appeal to the Bureau within 60 days of service of the denial notice. If no appeal is received, then the denial will be upheld. Appeal is due on January the 13th, 2020. The denial letter for application 32023 will be mailed out on 11/13/2019. I will notify you if the institution appeals this denial. So the recommendation that I have for this program is to deny the class, because even though they have a period of time to work on the denial of the BPPE, I would hate to see us admit a class of students into a program where it may or may not be able to continue.
Thank you.
Do you have any more, I mean, I assume you just read everything you have, but do you have any idea what the nature of the denial, why they denied it?
I do not. This is
all you
all
got.
this is all that we received.
I assume that, okay.
May
John?
I ask a procedural question? So you would be withdrawing your recommendation and substituting the one you just gave us?
Yes, to deny the class instead of approving it.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the NEC from board members? Seeing none, is there a representative from the school? If we could have you state your name, your title, and whether or not you agree with the recommendation. And if we could have you speak into the mic.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, board. I'm Bella Masip. I'm the Director of Education for Integrity College of Health. I also have our program director for the Vocational Nursing Program. This is Alice Sorrell, and I also have Leanne Roman, who is with Legacy Education, and we are here specifically, of course, to give some insight on what the BPP situation is for us. I want to say that I don't agree with the recommendation, and I respect it, but we have, of course, been through challenges and met our challenges and have been able to continue providing great education for our nursing students. And with the having one cohort, then it does have some financial challenges. I have a master's degree in nursing, a master's degree in public health, a master's degree in business, and with all that, the one thing I know is of course you have to be financially stable. So with our challenges, then I worked diligently to be able to find a path to be able to solve this issue, which I did. And at the end of last year in 2018, came into a management agreement with Legacy Education. Now, Legacy Education is familiar with our school and found that it was going to be a great addition to their campuses also. So they were going to continue to be with us to be able to provide any type of support we needed to provide the education for our students. And the Bureau composite score, which they go by for the composite score on the audited financial statements for last year, for 2017, though that composite score, which we will have to appeal and show them our composite score has come up, that we will be able to do when we have the appeal. I would like to also turn the mic over to our program director.
Good morning. I am the new program director. I came on at the end of July. At that point, I was made aware of the management agreement. And in speaking with Leanne Roman and her staff, it was made clear to me that their support was steadfast and has been demonstrated. We've been able to have resources that we need for our current students, that we need for our graduates. We have been able to offer weekly NCLEX review that's ongoing and cyclic. We've been able to beef up our tutoring activities with our current students. I feel very confident that we will be able to support this new start and give them the quality education that they deserve, and that they will have the stability that is necessary to become good nursing professionals with the support of Legacy. They have proven their steadfastness.
My name is Leanne Roman. I'm the president, CEO, and owner
I'll
of
get
Legacy
to the mic.
Education. Better? Got it? I have 25 years of higher education experience. I currently sit today on the board of the California Association of Private Post-Secondary Schools. So I understand regulations and regulatory. I entered into an agreement with Integrity College of Health in December of 2018. I did bring the contractual agreement in terms of me entering into the management agreement with the school. I solely entered into the management agreement with the school where it is a legal agreement. We have been infusing funds into the school in order to maintain its operations. And this is not an issue with regard to if we are providing a quality education to the students. These students are obtaining a quality education. Why we come before you today is because the school is approved by means of accreditation, which means that it doesn't just solely have the state approval of the Bureau of Private Post-Secondary Education, but they are also nationally accredited by ABHES, which is a nationally accredited institution and have been since 2009. They are in good standing with the National Accrediting Institution, of which I brought the certificate of accreditation for that. They are also approved by the Department of Education. The school is in good standing with the Department of Education. The reason for the denial from the BPPE, for the gentleman who asked for the letter, I actually do have the letter if the board would like to review it, is merely for the mere reason of the financial capacity for the institution. The institution is required, they follow the same financial guidelines as the U.S. Department of Education. That is stated in this letter that I have provided to you. And as part of that, you are required to maintain what's called a financial composite score, and you must maintain between a 1.5 and a 3. This particular institution has been at a below 1.5. In fact, it's a -1, 2016, 2017, and 2018. I entered into an agreement with them in December of 2018. They have started many vocational nursing courses during the course of 2016, 17, and 18. They have been in, they have maintained their national accreditation. They have maintained their approval with the Department of Education. They are approved for other programs, medical assisting, EMT, to name a few, and they have not lapsed in any type of quality education to any of these students. I bring this information before you today because I have a calculation of the composite score when we will go before the appeals committee that they will be at a 1.8 composite score based off of the financial infusion that has gone into the institution. We've not changed control. We have invested equity because we believe in this institution. We believe in the accrediting agency that they currently work with and in the demographic in which they serve, which is Pasadena. We come before you today because until Jessica, our nurse consultant, received this information, she was in support of the approval of this next class. We have 55 students that have been waiting since June to enter into this class starting December 4th. They've met all the admissions requirements. We cannot move forward to enroll them until, of the 55, we can only take 20, but the recommendation was to take 20. We can begin, the process to enroll for a December 4th start. If we have to go back to them because this is a mere, means to, we have to approve this process with the BPPE. However, we do not know how long it is going to take for the BPPE to schedule that appeal hearing. I have 60 days to tell them that we will appeal it, but I have no idea how long it's going to take for the BPPE to schedule that appeal hearing. So to deny these students, there is not another school close by that they can actually enter. They've been waiting since June. Of the class that we started in June, we started 20. We have 16 that are thriving in that program. That, the class is going well. We have a strong program director. We have a strong director of education and campus director, of which, she shared her credentials with you. I stand before you because I have another institution called High Desert Medical College that we currently offer vocational nursing programs in. Our most recent NCLEX pass score was 100%. I am committed to ensuring that these students will receive the education that you are expecting. I will protect the consumer, and I will do everything in my power to assist this institution to move through this process if you would just allow us the opportunity to support Ms. Gomez's original recommendation to approve the start. I thank her for, as her responsibility to bring it to you. And, and I feel like it's ours to demonstrate the evidence to you that I have all of the certifications, anything that you would like to see, so that we are not trying to do anything to harm or put any students at risk.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Based on the change in circumstances and the offer of new and different evidence information that wasn't available to the nursing education consultant when she made the recommendation, I would recommend that this matter be referred to the education committee so an appropriate hearing could be conducted.
May I ask a procedural or operational question, Madam President?
John?
I'd either address council or Ms. Gomez. If we have any guidance from Code of Regulations relating to the independent judgment or action of BPPE or other bureau or agency?
The regulation we have is that they have to be BPPE approved.
Question to Legacy.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been in recent contact with VPPE in terms of trying to set a date?
So we just received the letter. The letter was dated November 8th. I have multiple communications with the BPPE. I've met with Dr. Michael Marion, who is the Bureau Executive Chief. I have met with Lisa Rafridi, and I have met with Mariana O'Connor, the Chief Licensing. And they all were, they had requested for us to provide the additional documentation that we did of our management agreement, of the calculation of the composite score, and they came back to me and they said, Leanne, this is a matter of procedure because of the fact that the state is approved, because of the state goes by a guideline, I cannot produce audited financials until the school's year end, which is 12/31. 12/30, so based off, and so they purposely, the school submitted for its renewal in February, delayed until now in November to give me the opportunity so that I can formally appeal this. I'll go before an appeals committee, but the issue, and I will be able to demonstrate. I can demonstrate, I already have the U.S. Department of Education calculation that based off of the infusion of the capital and what we have been doing, that the school is within range. They are at 1.8. So this will not be a matter that will even, that this is the only reason that the school is denied. And it's this reason this year, the BPPE received their notification of the below composite score standard in 2016 and 2017. Because they are approved by means of accreditation, the accreditation handled the reporting that was required in order for us to provide them the financial plan that they are able to maintain operating business as usual. There is nothing. The school is not interrupted by the BPPE with this notice of denial. It's their obligation to notify you, but we operate business as usual. And our medical assisting program and our nursing program, we currently have a cohort that is in existence, and with the Department of Education. We just merely have to go before the appeals committee. My concern is I do not know the length of time that the BPPE will take in order to schedule that hearing.
So the answer is, pardon me, I'm sorry.
So
the answer is no, you do not know about a hearing date.
Oh,
at
I do
this
not
time.
know a hearing date.
Thank you.
I do not know a hearing date.
Excuse me, who is your accrediting agency?
ABHES?
ABHES, thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, I think I have a question for Mr. Swenson, or somebody to let me know. So based on the letter, are they, at this moment today, are they BPPE accredited? Or has that somehow been interrupted or?
Question.
Or
They're not an accrediting agency.
I have the letter here. If you,
Have you filed a notice of appeal?
yes.
Oh, that's what we need to.
Then there's a process. If they have filed a notice of appeal, there's a process spelled out in the letter of, from BPPE. This board is without jurisdiction to consider those issues. So this board has an entirely distinct jurisdiction here. And once again, because they're offering new and different facts and weren't available to the NEC when the recommendation was made with the change in circumstances, what I'm recommending is the matter be referred to the Education Committee for a full hearing.
Madam Chair.
May I ask a question? As when it's referred to the Education Committee, can we talk about it today, or is it something that I have to come back to?
Come back to.
In the mic. In the mic.
You would have to come back and talk when they have their committee meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Chair, I was just asked that we follow what the council has recommended, and I make a motion that we refer it back to the Education Committee to be reviewed.
Second.
Thank you.
So it was by Ken and Bernice. So is there further discussion by the board needed?
just a bit of clarification to help the school. If we were to wait to the next board meeting, that would be even further into the year 2020. So having you scheduled as part of Education Committee will get you before part of the board sooner. Hopefully, that will give you time to get a set date and possibly, who knows, a response. However, given the statutes, given regulations, our hands are tied. We really cannot approve a course when there is a question with that particular body. That's why we receive a copy of the notice.
May I ask a question? The Education Committee meeting will be, I believe, prior to the date that they have to have the information to the BPPE. I'm not sure what I will have that will be different than what we have now.
All the information she has right now.
Based on the representations made this morning, it sounds like there were additional documents that haven't been provided
Okay.
that they're offering to provide to the board today. If this matter is continued or referred to committee for a hearing, then those additional documents could be presented in an orderly manner, along with any other evidence that's available up to the time of the hearing. So it would allow for the committee to review the matter and make recommendations to the full board, and then avoid a situation where an undue amount of time is being spent at a regular board meeting and not all the information has been reviewed by the appropriate parties.
John, did you have a comment or question? So there's a motion and a second to have it referred to the Education Committee, made by Ken, second by Bernice. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice? Yes. Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Motion carries. So the Education Committee will inform you when their meeting will be.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to 13C3, Institute of Technology, Modesto. Thank you, Ms. Margarita Valdez. We've received your report and recommendation. Do board members have any questions for our NEC?
Those are. Where we at?
Seeing none, is there a representative from the school here?
I do want to comment that there is a new director that was approved. The original director that put in the request has been in contact with the new director, and I have been discussing it with her, so they're aware of what is being presented.
Okay. So if you could state your name and title and let us know whether or not you agree with the NEC's recommendation, and if you could speak into the mic, it would be appreciated.
My name is Cynthia Martin McCallick, and yes, I do agree with the board.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions for the representative from the school? Seeing none, is there a possible motion?
I would move to accept the NEC's recommendation regarding Integrity College of Health and adopt its recommendations, her recommendations.
Cheryl Turner, second.
IoT.
Is that correct? Oh, we're on the wrong school.
On school.
Wrong agenda item.
Thank you.
I'm 10 minutes behind the curve. State the motion, if I may. I would move to accept the NEC's report regarding Institute of Technology, Modesto, and adopt the recommendations.
All right, Cheryl Turner seconds that.
Is there any further board discussion needed? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
Myself is a yes, and Ken is absent or indisposed of. Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. So that brings us to Northwest College Riverside. Is Faye Silverman present?
Who's covering for her?
Marie, do we know who's covering for Faye? She's.
Yeah.
Ms. Gomez?
Thank you, Jessica. We've received Faye Silverman's report and recommendations. Do board members have any questions for the NEC?
There is again a change in the recommendation for this report.
Okay.
Since the report was written, Faye received information that 3 of the violations have been corrected. Additionally, on all of the paperwork for a new class was supposed to be submitted no later than September 15th. On October the 30th, the NEC received a revised pediatric clinical site, which made it so that they did have the clinical site for the pediatrics, so that they did have the adequate resources for the program to have a course. It was confirmed that the site was available for the students. So on November 4th, the information was all submitted to have the course approved. And so the recommendation now is rather than to deny the class, but to approve it.
But to
say it again?
we didn't hear you.
Rather than deny the class, to approve the class.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarification?
John?
Yes, just to clarify, 3 violations were corrected, and there were 3 violations that were noted, correct?
I have that the violation number 3, 4, and 6 were corrected.
So 3 of 3 were corrected?
3 of 6 were corrected.
So today, they appear to be in compliance with respect to violations?
I believe there are still 3 violations that were not corrected.
And then based on the 3 violations?
No, it looks like there were 8 violations total. 3 of them have been corrected.
But you are still approving?
Yes, Faye had determined that they were working on the violations, and in good faith, she felt like it would be okay to go ahead and approve the class because they now do have it. The concern was that everything was submitted so late to the board because our final date is September 15th, but they did get the final information to her November 4th, so she was able to approve it, but it didn't hit your report.
Any other questions for the NEC from board members?
Respectfully, Faye is aware of these changes and made her,
Faye is the one that sent them to me.
so this is her change in
This
recommendation.
is her change.
Okay, excellent.
Cheryl?
I'm ready for the motion.
Okay, well, let me have them introduce themselves and whether or not they agree. So if we could have you introduce yourself and your title and whether or not you agree with the NEC's recommendation.
Hi, I'm Dr. Catherine Silke. I'm the Director of Nursing for the program. And I do agree with the amended recommendation, of course. Am I allowed to explain, though, about the violations? Because they've all been corrected. I have I think it was sent to the board
For-
report dated November 8th that says all but, there were 8 violations, all but 3 had
Oh,
not
okay.
been corrected. So then on the addendum that Ms. Silverman provided, she says those outstanding 3 of the 8 have also been corrected. And as far as the pediatric clinical site being available, that was her only issue. And the concern was we were using Totally Kids as the clinical site, which is an excellent experience for our students. However, they only do their scheduling of schools once a year in December, end of December. And they were not going to change their policy because we needed to provide Faye to verify that we were going to be booked with them because they don't do their schedule until the end of the year. So we even had a letter made from the clinical site, Totally Kids, stating that they've had our students, they will continue to have our students in 2020 and 2021. But Ms. Silverman advised that that was not enough for her to verify that those sites would be available. So because this meeting was before the end of December and before the clinical site is going to make their schedule, it would be impossible for Ms. Silverman to verify that we're going to be there. So we actually changed the rotation and obtained a brand-new clinical site, pediatric ER, and we're using them now instead of Totally Kids because, as I said, because of the scheduling issue with Totally Kids, we have other pediatric sites we can use instead. So we changed our site so that Ms. Silverman could indeed verify that we are allowed to be there, and that was the only issue that she had.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Are we ready? You want to respond?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I do. Can you hear me?
They have.
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Mitchell here, Mitchell First, the president of the college, and I appreciated Dr. Silke's comments because it's important for the board to hear that our college always maintains the appropriate resources, always has the appropriate clinical sites for all aspects of the program, and always has. So in this particular case, it was just the clinical site would not verify that far out. And so now we even have another approved site that is even more awesome than the previous. So again, I just want the board to always to hear that our college always has the appropriate resources for our program. Thank you.
My name is Baylor. I'm the COO for the college. I want to thank the board for allowing us to make the comments on the recommendation. And I'd also like to thank Dr. Silke here, who has recently taken the helm of the program and has quickly cleared up all of the violations and has been working with Ms. Silverman to make sure that the board is reassured that all of the regulations are being met now under her leadership. And she's not new to our colleges or to the program. She was transferred from another one of our colleges, and she's doing a fantastic job making sure the board can be reassured that we take care of our students, and we're committed to producing safe, competent, and qualified vocational nurses. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Yeah, so I move that we adopt the amended report and the amended recommendations of the NAC for Northwest College Riverside.
I second.
Just as a point of clarification, Madam President, if I may.
Yes?
Can we speak to the substance of what would be contained in the revised report or amended recommendation?
The only information that she gave me was that indeed they do have the class. It was presented to her on November 4th. That I did not understand that all of them had been corrected, but the final 3 violations have been corrected. And so her
recommendation changed.
My question really is, based on the new information, what is the recommendation of the NEC?
Approve the course. Approve the class of students.
30 students to a full-time day class on December 2nd. That class would graduate on March 5th, 2021.
Yes.
Does board need further discussion or have further questions? Seeing none, any public comment? So our motion is from Cheryl to move to adopt the amended report and recommendation, and it was seconded by Carol. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the executive officer's report. Elaine?
Do people need a break, or should I just proceed?
So let's take a 10-minute.
Okay. I was just for a preemptive strike here.
Yeah, so we'll go on break for 10 minutes. We'll come back at 11:20. Call this meeting back to order. And we are on the executive officer's report at this time. Elaine?
Great. Thank you very much, Madam President. The board has seen the written report, and if there are no questions on that, I'm going to move into just a few of the topics we especially wanted the board to hear about today. So if there are any questions or comments yet, great. The first thing we wanted to make sure that to report on, of course, is our ongoing work with regard to care for patients on mechanical ventilators. As the board will recall, we've been working both with the Respiratory Care Board and on our own with an eye toward developing a program. Just as very, very brief history, when we started meeting with the Respiratory Care Board, we were discussing the different scopes that our boards have, just in terms of making sure that patients were being cared for by the properly licensed, the properly trained personnel. And there were a few gray areas. Now, after the boards issued a joint statement in April of this year, it became clearer to us that there was a much more significant matter with regard to home health care, that LVNs were the principal caretakers for people in home health care, many of whom are medically vulnerable children. So some movement was deemed necessary. RCB actually indicated that in terms of home health care, they were fairly neutral about that. But anyway, so we moved forward over the summer and over the fall discussing this matter, and we've convened a few meetings with some stakeholders, and then just earlier this month, we were able to pull together a first meeting of a advisory group consisting of folks in the industry, care providers, agencies, advocates, and we were joined by our own Carol Mountain. That we walked through a number of the key issues here, because what we're I think moving toward in the end here is the development of a post-licensure certification for LVNs and PTs. This is in no way to make them respiratory care practitioners, but it is to make sure that they are properly and consistently trained and regulated to provide care. And this would be more of the maintenance type of care. This is not installing a procedure. This is not creating a new treatment. This is making sure that patients who have that bedside care. The issue that we were looking at to correct here is that while I believe most agencies have been providing care and have been having very successful programs of care with predominantly LVNs, but there are some PTs and developmental centers. The fact is that there are several, well, at least 2,000 home health agencies and congregate living facilities. We can't, at this point, verify that every single care provider is providing a high-quality, detailed training and is monitoring that program and monitoring patient care. Because remember, this could be a very, very, I can't even use the word diverse, but the range of care and even the range of ventilator equipment. I mean, the ventilator equipment itself, it'll range from something that's just, fresh off Star Trek to something that's pretty much antediluvian in nature. And so LVNs and PTs are looking at this vast care. And truthfully, the more important part is their care must be coordinated specific to the patients. So as we've been having meetings and discussions, it's become kind of clear to us that what is needed is a statewide consistent training program, certification program for nursing professionals, PTs, who choose to be in that line of care. So as we've been going forward, we've come up with a variety of matters that we've put before this advisory committee and others. But as I said, this is very much a work in progress right now, but we hope to move forward with some legislation. The staff has been, as I said, working with our experts and a number of folks in the field who've been providing this kind of training for their personnel for years, decades really. So we're looking at designing perhaps not a universal curriculum per se, but guideline standards, and then being able to regulate that so that we would be able to make sure that there aren't bad actors in the field. There aren't people just looking to set up home health agencies to make a quick dollar. It is, of course, BVNPT's paramount duty to make sure that patients are cared for, that consumers are taken care of safely by qualified people. So we've been moving ahead developing this concept, and we hope to move forward in 2020 with that. It will be a very large undertaking, believe me. We figure that as we've been kind of charting this out, the implementation of it itself would probably take several years. But we believe that in the end, we would have a very, very strong program that will safeguard our consumers. So at this point, if there were questions about this part of, yep. Great. Let me find my notes. The second part, of course, I want to speak about, of course, is our strategic plan, and I wanted to compliment the board on Wednesday's work. Folks did a great job pulling together what we perceive as the committee's roles and the committee's objectives and measurements in achieving our strategic plan moving forward. So we believe that this was the last piece. The strategic plan document we sent out contained the staff's work in creating an action plan and timeline. So we feel like we have a very, very strong strategic plan to move us forward between now and 2025. We should be finalizing the whole document with the piece that we worked on Wednesday, and that'll be going forward to the board as soon as basically as soon as we get back to our desks and are able to correct all the typos and move that forward. So if there are any questions or comments on that. But again, let me say that the board members did a terrific job, and we're really looking forward to seeing a really invigorated and energetic and engaged move forward for BVNPT. The last thing, of course, is always the good news, and that would be our financial report. The board members were sent a fund condition document, and I did kind of want to walk through a few parts of that. I think it's important to know, and by the way, I wanted to compliment our budget analyst, Vicki Saavedra, who has been going through our finances with a fine-tooth comb and kind of grilling the folks at the DCA's Budget and Fiscal Office on a weekly basis. So I wanted to thank you, Vicki, for your fine work. And she's self-taught too, by the way. This is remarkable. But walking through this fund condition document, you'll see that right now our situation is we're balanced, but we are eating into our reserves slightly, and short of having a new revenue stream, by about 2022, we start going into the red. Now, as the board knows, we've been discussing the new fee structure for the schools over the past year or two, actually probably longer than that, more like 3 or 4 years. And the board approved draft language last year to move forward, but with our other logistical operational issues, we weren't able to pursue the legislation to completion last year. We do need to do so this year. Our initial conversations with the folks in the Senate and Assembly committees have been very positive. At this point in time, the concepts themselves from the language you saw last year don't change, but right now the staff has been working to, I think, reassess the numbers. A great deal of our financial conditions change has been with the Attorney General's fee increase that was levied upon us on September 1. Casual estimates have ranged around, but we've been told that our annual change in fees, increase in fees, could be as much as about $900,000 a year. That's a lot to make up for. And so without a new revenue stream, we will be hurting. We will be in some trouble. Now, I do want to, again, compliment our staff, especially our AEO, because she pinches every penny till it hurts. We've been being very frugal with everything, but things come up. In fact, today, a new wrinkle came up. Our entire security system in the building is fried, and we will be having to replace that as soon as we possibly can. Stay tuned. But as I said, it is essential that we move forward on the fee proposal this year. It may be that we're able to put that into our sunset legislation. As I said, we'll be discussing that with the legislative offices. And but as I said, we have a couple of years. We're also looking at, and Vicki has been, I think, looking at a few funding scenarios, and she considers, and I think she's probably right, that while the DCA budget office kind of set a straight figure projected out for our revenues coming in just from the licensee application fees, we think that may well be a low number, but Vicki does feel confident that is not going to be lower than this number. So we're fairly strong on that. So as I said, this is what we're looking at right now. I did want to make another small observation, and that, of course, is the fact that I think everybody has heard a great deal about the fiscal system and its lengthy implementation phase, as I could say it politely. It is not still completely operational. We have not received official closed actual numbers for fiscal year 2017 and 18 or fiscal year 2018-19. We haven't seen adjusted statements for this current fiscal year, which is now half over. What we do have is ballpark figures, and they're probably pretty good, but it's not exact. And we could find any number of surprises once those numbers are really closed. It's troubling, and it doesn't enable us to provide this board with the kind of quality information necessary for you to do your own fiduciary duty for this board, and that is very troubling to me personally. It is what it is, and we can't ask, we can't move the fiscal project any faster than we are. We do regularly ask for better reports than we are receiving, but at this point in time, as I said, for this coming budget year, for the next budget year, we are solvent, but we do need to work on that, which is why, as I said, it is essential that in 2020, we look to our revenue.
Question?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so as far as the Attorney General fees, we're anticipating that they go up. How are they billed?
Yes, the bill is, this is an hourly, so this is approximately a 30-something% increase in our fee for the attorneys and for the paralegals that work with us for the enforcement cases.
And are we anticipating the number of enforcement cases based on trends are going to increase? Are they stable?
That is a great question. You know, it's a little ironic, and like I said, this is a great question. It's a bit ironic because since our enforcement staff has really just been moving so fast and doing so much work to clear the backlogs from years past, we have been having, I think, a larger caseload than we might otherwise. So I think in the next probably 2 years, we're going to see that in the same fee level, and we might then start to plateau and decrease a bit. But as I said, that's probably not before 2 years out from now.
And one other thing, so, and there's also a discussion about the possibility that inactive licensees may potentially have a reduced fee. I guess there was some legislation, but it was tabled or didn't go through, but I'm not quite sure the status of that and how something like that could potentially affect our, revenues.
I believe inactive members, inactive licensees do pay a lower fee. It's that transition and the possibility that somebody will say that they're inactive and not be inactive or vice versa. But I don't think that changes the overall figure, the revenue figure. We could probably do a little bit of analysis on that, but I don't know that would change the income at all. But we would absolutely be certain that if people are eligible for a lower fee, they are assessed at that fee.
Thank you.
Any other questions I can answer? Right. I did want to make one last mention, and that, of course, is that, as the board will know, that our very final report in response to the monitor's recommendations is due January 1st. The board will recall that when we filed our July 1 report this year, we essentially demonstrated that we had completed implementation of all of the monitor's recommendations. So this final report is really going to be, for lack of a better expression, kind of a retrospective report. What we hope to do is present kind of a before and after snapshot of BVNPT and show, I think, not just so much that the implementation of the recommendations, but how those implementations have shaped what we do today. So we'll be preparing that. A vast amount of that information, of course, was already contained in the Sunset Report. So we don't think that there's a whole lot of deep analysis yet to do. And that would be my report, Madam President.
Thank you. Board members, do you have any questions for Elaine? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on to the Enforcement Division report. If we could have Ms. Candace?
Good morning. There we go.
Good morning, thank you.
Of course. My report is in your packet, so you all have that and have read it. But if you will indulge me for just a moment, there are a few things that I would like to highlight. The enforcement unit currently has one vacancy, and that vacancy is actually going to remain vacant temporarily. And that is a situation where I've been working with the assistant executive officer to evaluate and determine if the workloads support and continue to warrant that position where it is, or if we might use it elsewhere more efficiently and more effectively. So having said that, essentially we're at full staff in the enforcement unit. The division recently welcomed back Daisy Fuentes, who is one of our probation monitors. We also welcomed back to the board Rosemary Chavez as a special investigator. I point that out because I think it's significant that these are both individuals that left the board to seek promotion elsewhere and have decided that they want to be back at the board. I know that this situation is not unique to enforcement, that there are other divisions that are experiencing the same thing. And so I think that that speaks volumes of where we are now. We also have had 2 internal promotions. So we are working very hard to prepare our people for the next level in their career. And it's rewarding when we can promote within. You also have a copy of the statistical report for the first quarter of the 1920 fiscal year, which seems impossible. And there are a couple of things I'd like to point out on that. With regard to the total number of investigations assigned, at the beginning of in January 2018, which is when our new supervising special investigator started, there was a queue of unassigned cases that was greater than 200 cases. At the close of the last quarter, at the close of December last year, that was down to 177 cases. At the close of the last quarter, it was down to 62 cases, and today that stands at 35 cases. So you can see that she is making significant progress in eliminating that backlog. Another thing I'd like to kind of point out that's not in my report is that the special investigators are working hard to further develop and maintain the relationships with sister agencies, namely CDPH and the BRN, and working very closely with their investigators for those individuals who may be a CNA as well or an RN. And so really looking at full circle enforcement. We currently have a total of 1,375 cases pending. That is a number that continues to drop. Of significance in our cases pending is that 72% of those cases are within the 360 days performance measure target. Of the total number of investigations that were completed, 64% of those were within the 360 performance measure target. We continue to refer cases to the Office of the Attorney General. As Elaine pointed out, the staff is doing a magnificent job of that, and so you see there were 91 cases referred last quarter, which is up 34 from the previous. I think that this is especially impressive, and that is the total number of disciplinary cases completed As you all know, we're coming out of a less than ideal place, and the staff has been working very hard. A couple of years back, there were a lot of changes, kind of a recalibration. There were a number of changes to our caseloads, cases that were reopened. And at that point in time, there was an extraordinary backlog. And as you know, all of these performance measures are based upon averages. And so working through that backlog impacts these performance measures, and it takes time. And so I think that we're at a place now where we're really starting to see significant impact of all of the work that's gone into this. If you look at the total number of disciplinary cases completed, in the last quarter, the average to complete those cases was 819 days. This is up only 5% from the close of the last fiscal year. That is extraordinary because 30% of those disciplinary cases that were closed during that quarter were cases that were open between 1,000 and 3,000 days. So even though a huge amount of those cases were the extreme backlog cases, we were still only up 5% on our average. I don't have information in here. It's in the statistics, but I don't have information in my report regarding the probation unit. But I wanted to kind of give you an update on what's happening in the probation unit. The manager of the probation unit, Rocio Yomas, has been working closely with Ken Swenson, our counsel, and I want to say thank you, Ken, because I know that she has been emailing you on a regular basis. Rocio's really been doing a great job of going through our probation program and making sure that everything that we're doing it the way that we're supposed to be doing it. We're doing it with the authority to be doing it, and that we're taking advantage of authority that we have that maybe we weren't using to its full extent before. So that's an area where we continue to excel. Overall, we had a very, very strong finish to the 18-19 fiscal year, and we are anticipating an even stronger finish this year. The last thing I would like to say is that this is all incredibly impressive, and I see the work that goes into this every single day. But these numbers that we see are actually in addition to a number of other efforts that are going on. And so at the same time that they're doing this, the staff is working on things such as Sunset Report, year-end reports. They're making videos for outreach. They're doing cross-training. We're working on development of our expert witness program, both training and recruitment. We're working to improve the petition process. So there are countless other things that the individuals are doing that are making this program stronger. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Actually, if I may, I would just commend the Enforcement Division and its chief, who've shown them such tremendous commitment, and Candace, of course, for her tremendous leadership, and she's got some good managers behind her as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The enforcement management team is an outstanding group of individuals. I'm proud to be part of it.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to second that in regards to the comments that were made.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that will bring us to let's go to the Reg Committee report.
Madam Chair, if we
sorry.
could take a brief recess, I'm going to need to confer about that.
Okay, so if we could do 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
Yeah. You want me?
So we'll come back at 12.
Thank you.
We are going to go to agenda item for the Ledge Reg Committee. John?
And Madam Chair, if I may, there's been a concern raised about the sufficiency of the notice for potential actions that are referred to in the committee report itself. That's been reviewed, and I find that there's actual or at least substantial compliance with the notice requirements so that the board may act upon that agenda item today.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President and board members. Ledge Reg Committee, consisting of Ms. Carpenter and myself, met. We were very ably assisted by our executive officer, Elaine, and staff, and several legal counsel from Department of Consumer Affairs. We met October 14th, prior to our full board meeting where we considered sunset issues. Just as a note, we have 3 attachments that were included with the board packet. First relates to the role of the committee. The second is legislative tracking. And then the third is sunset legislation concept, and we'll be taking an action item on that point just as an advisory. One of the beauties of our committee is that there's a lot of overlap with the discussion, so we'll also consider items as between practice and education, and the EO's report already included a great bit of detail regarding mechanical ventilation and some of the issues therein related. Just to go through, we had a detailed discussion regarding AB 1076, and just as a reminder, that relates to automatic relief on certain criminal records with a future implementation date. I think the department, if I'm not mistaken, anticipates a somewhat of a delay. So I think, if I'm correct, maybe council can correct me, we're looking at a July 1st, 2023 full implementation date.
That's correct.
Okay, and what that does is it revises how boards and bureaus under the DCA evaluate applications for initial licensure when there are criminal convictions, and it provides some relief for the applicant regarding those which are considered remote. And under the bill that was chaptered, I believe it's 7 years. Is that correct? Any questions from the board regarding that?
I just noticed it says in the report 2024, not 2023.
Is it 2023 or 2024, Council?
Are you referring to the bill number or?
No, the implementation date.
I just noticed the implementation date in the report says 7/1/2024. Mr. Durking had said, or you had said 2023. Just clarifying.
That may be subject to correction. But as a substantive matter, I don't think that really impacts how we're going to look, how we're going to approach the issue as we move forward.
That's correct, and the comment regarding the targeted regulation date is accurate, the 2024 date for implementation regulations.
Oh, thank you. So we'll note that. We reviewed completed legislative tracking for this particular session, since all those which would have indeed have the greatest impact have either been chaptered or vetoed. So attachment B contains a list of those items that we tracked. Any other questions or comments regarding the agenda item? right, so then we move to agenda item 5, which was what our committee considered the sunset legislation concept. For the most part, these are technical changes and conforming changes with other enumerated sections of the code, with cross-referencing of these sections. For the most part, they're technical. Section 4532.1 creates a specific language, the inclusion of that language for a cite and find program. So our action item all right, so that's okay, no action item there. We talked about outreach, possible meetings with legislators, social communication, and outreach to stakeholders. So regarding this particular item, we moved and voted to accept the 2020 sunset legislation concept and refer to staff to determine for further consideration. So I would defer to Madam President for a vote on that issue.
Okay, so this is move to accept the 2020 sunset legislation concept and refer to staff to determine further consideration?
Correct.
So that came out of the Ledge Reg Committee. Is there any further questions or discussion by board members?
I'm not quite sure what you're.
Cheryl, can you?
Oh, yes. All right, 2020 concept. You mean the report?
Well, the language contained in the
In the
report.
report. Okay, got it.
If I may, in your appended to this committee's report that says 2020 sunset legislation narrative, at this point, because the bill itself would be, one, huge, and two, the final numbers and placement are still in discussion, and three, because then the legislative committee that carries this bill also gets to say yes and no. What we present for you is this narrative, this list of concepts that we would recommend go into our sunset bill eventually.
Got it. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions by board members? Seeing none, any public comment? We'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Yes. Myself is yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. John?
Yeah, thank you. We discussed further information regarding the contents of the proposed school cite and find program, updates on the rulemaking packages and process. We tentatively scheduled the next meeting for Friday, January 10th, 2020.
Well,
Is there anything else?
There were two action items in addition to what's been acted upon. One is the mechanical ventilator care motion from committee, and then the other was the school fee motion from committee.
Oh, I beg your pardon, yes. Going back to school fees, which I just touched on, we discussed the legislative concept relating to VNs and PTs providing mechanical ventilator care to patients. Did everybody hear that? We discussed a legislative concept relating to VNs and PTs providing mechanical ventilator care to patients. EO provided an update to stakeholder collaborations and how we're moving forward with outreach. And the purpose of this concept is to ensure that patients receive proper care from our licensees while on mechanical ventilation, and to develop training and education standards. We have discussed this before, and it was brought up through the practice committee, I believe. This proposed concept is intended to be in its own legislative bill. EO recommended further involvement by the Education Committee, and we did move out of the committee to direct staff to take appropriate steps to investigate and evaluate a mechanical ventilator care certification program for VNs and PTs. So is there any further discussion on that? I know we've discussed this matter before in some detail.
So the motion is to move to direct staff to take appropriate steps to investigate and evaluate a mechanical ventilator care certification program for VN and PTs. And this came out of Ledge Committee.
That's correct.
Do any board members have further questions for the committee? Seeing none, is there any public comment? And if we could have you state your name and title?
That one.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Saskia Kim, Regulatory Policy Specialist with the California Nurses Association. Appreciate that DC Legal and Council came down and took a look at the notice issue. Appreciate you looking at that. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today about the mechanical ventilator care concept. CNA's comments today are based on proposed language, which was made public as a part of the meeting materials for the Respiratory Care Board's November 1st meeting. This document is entitled Department of Consumer Affairs Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians Proposed Statutory Language. While our understanding is that this language is a starting place and is not yet final, there are a number of provisions in the proposal which raise significant concerns. First, we understand the intent of the proposed legislation is not to expand the existing scope of practice of LVNs, yet the proposed language that we have seen would allow for just that. For example, the language would allow unlimited expansion and enhancement through specialized board-approved continuing education courses by providing that an LVN and PT could have their license modified by successfully completing specialized CE courses, including but not limited to intravenous therapy, blood withdrawal, intravenous therapy with blood withdrawal, or mechanical ventilator care. In effect, this language would allow the board to add additional enhancements to this list in the future, thus allowing the board and not the legislature to determine the scope of practice for LVNs and PTs. Also, under the joint statement, an LVN is authorized to provide care to the patient receiving invasive mechanical ventilation. While the proposed language does not define the term mechanical ventilator care, our understanding of the term is that it means the operation and maintenance of the mechanical ventilator itself, which would be outside an LVN's scope of practice, as opposed to care for the patient on the ventilator, which would be within an LVN's scope of practice. Second, the proposed language we have seen would inappropriately expand the scope of practice of psychiatric technicians by deleting restrictions on the settings in which they can practice and the patients for whom they may care. The language would delete existing provisions which limits PT administration of medication by hypodermic injection to mental health or developmental disability facilities. It would delete existing provisions which limit the withdrawal of blood from a patient with a mental illness or disability. This proposed supplementary new scope of practice represents a massive expansion of both the setting and the patient population that could be provided care by a PT. The PT educational focus differs from the LVN education in significant ways. This is why their scopes of practice are different as well. And it's why CNA has significant concerns regarding the language's PT scope expansion. In effect, the language would allow a PT to practice in a manner equivalent to an LVN whose basic training and scope of practice is in care of patients in any setting under direction of a physician or an RN. So for PTs, only 24% of theory hours and 28% of clinical hours are dedicated to nursing science. On the other hand, LVN theory and clinical hours are fully dedicated to nursing science. LVNs have educational preparation in diverse settings and with diverse patient populations. With one very limited exception, they're allowed to work in every patient care unit of a general acute care hospital, providing nursing care to patients within their scope of practice. This difference was also stated by the California Association of Healthcare Services at Home in a 2007 response to a member question, and I quote, "Can we use a psych tech in place of an LVN in our home health agency?" The answer was no. Neither Title 22 nor the Medicare conditions of participation allow for this. Though the scope of practice for a psych tech and an LVN is very similar, education and experiential requirements for eligibility of licensure are different. In addition to this proposed expansion, the language we have seen would allow this expanded authority to provide mechanical ventilator care to be under the direction of a psychologist, rehabilitation therapist, or a social worker. None of these practitioners are authorized or qualified to provide or supervise the medical or medical surgical nursing care of patients on mechanical ventilation. Third, the language we've seen arguably goes well beyond dealing with mechanical ventilator care to also permit LVNs and psychiatric technicians to administer medication intravenously. Currently, LVNs are permitted to administer medications by oral routes, topical routes, and parentally by hypodermic injection, intradermal injection, and intramuscular injection when directed by a physician and surgeon. They're not permitted to administer intravenous medication, and pursuant to a 2005 court ruling, the BVMPT is prohibited from adopting a regulation authorizing LVNs to administer intravenous medications. The proposed language, however, would arguably permit the board to enlarge the scope of practice of LVNs and PTs through rulemaking under its proposed broad statutory authority to enhance scope of practice through CE courses and with the exclusive approval of the BVMPT. Furthermore, the proposed language would modify the term hypodermic injection by deleting injection so that Section 2860.5 would permit an LVN to, and I'm going to quote, administer medications by routes that include but are not limited to oral, subcutaneous, hypodermic, and intramuscular routes, end quote. Hypodermic means beneath the dermis, i.e. the subcutaneous tissue. So unless the redundant use of hypodermic and subcutaneous is a drafting error, it's not clear why it remains in the proposed language or what route of parental administration it intends to reference. Combined with the expansive authority I mentioned earlier, the board could make specific, potentially significant changes in the scope of practice of LVNs and PTs who are not independent practitioners based only on what it considers to be appropriate specialized continuing education certification courses. Fourth, the language we have seen also conflicts with BVMPT and Respiratory Care Board's stated concerns regarding competency certification. The language proposes that competency certification for LVNs and PTs could be provided by their employer or, in the case of PTs, the durable medical equipment provider. Under 16 CCR Section 2576.7, private duty care is contracted directly between a PT and the patient with mental disorders or developmental disabilities, or an LVN and the patient. So in those cases, the patient is the employer. CNA does not believe that a patient should be documenting competencies for licensed services by a licensed healthcare provider. Furthermore, the joint statement makes clear that BVMPT and the Respiratory Care Board both believe it's an unsafe practice for vendors to instruct healthcare professionals. A quote from the joint statement, "A concern to both boards is unlicensed and or unqualified vendors instructing healthcare professionals to provide ventilator care. Both boards agree this is unsafe practice," end quote. Yet the language we've seen would allow these same vendors to certify PT's competency. So for all of those reasons, CNA does oppose the proposed language that was made public and we've seen, and we'll plan to follow up these comments with more detailed written comments so you have something in writing as well. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. We'll look forward to receiving the detailed written comments. We'll remember.
Madam President.
John?
Yeah, I acknowledge the speaker's language regarding scope of practice, but any reference to proposed language I would respectfully submit is rather premature because, you know, we don't, the motion is to direct staff to take appropriate steps to investigate and evaluate a medical care, mechanical ventilator care certification program. We don't know what that final product is going to look like.
Thank you. Any further board discussion needed? Seeing none. Further public comment? Seeing none, the motion is to move to direct staff to take appropriate steps to investigate and evaluate a mechanical ventilator care certification program for VNs and PTs. And it came out of Ledge Committee. Paul?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol? Thank you. Motion carried. And John, you had one more?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, this related to school fees. The executive officer at our meeting led the discussion regarding previously proposed school fees. There was a recap of the previous proposal. More detailed discussion can be found in our committee report. Were there any questions or comments regarding that agenda item? So it was moved out of the committee to accept the school board fee, the school fee concept and direct board staff to establish the fee ranges and finally to propose to the full board.
Thank you. Any questions from board members?
But that still has to be approved by the legislature.
Right.
School fees? Oh, yeah. School fees still has to be approved by the legislature.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, as with the prior legislation we discussed.
Yes.
Also, okay.
What was that, Alita?
On the mechanical ventilation thing, anything that we would come up with would also have to be approved by the legislature, which is to say that we are not setting the standards.
Right.
The legislature is approving or disapproving.
Yes. So the motion that came out of the Ledge Committee was moved to accept the school fee concept and direct board staff to establish the fee ranges and propose to the full board. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Paul?
No.
John?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bernice?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Alita?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Yes.
Carol? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. That does conclude our report.
Thank you. So I have a question for the board. So at this time, we can take lunch, or we can take the last two items. What is the pleasure?
Be comfortable with moving forward.
Last two items, please, for me.
Yes, I would like to move forward.
Okay. So we will go on to the Licensing and Evaluations Committee report.
Thank you, Madam President. The Licensing and Evaluation Committee met on October 7th. Points of discussion focus on the function and purpose of the committee, also review of strategic goals, and agreement to meet in January of 2020, date to be determined.
Thank you. Jen? Are you giving licensing division report?
Good afternoon. So the licensing division report that our assistant executive officer presents, I wanted just to highlight a couple areas on the report. One of them being the CE audit, started in June, and to date, we have issued 20 citations, the enforcement division, and 17 of them were LVNs, 3 were PTs, which averages about 10% of what has been issued from June till current. And then also, I wanted to compliment the evaluation unit for their stellar numbers in the equivalency processing times. We hit, in March, we were at 40 weeks, and this is also in the licensing statistic report data. July, they were at 20 weeks, and to current, we're at 2 weeks for in-house and online equivalency applications, which is huge. So those were a couple things I wanted to highlight, as well as the credit cards that we are accepting. We are averaging about 10 a week. So not a whole lot, but it's moving up. I also wanted to introduce Ivan Brent. He's our supervising program tech 2. He is overseeing the reception staff, renewals desk, and he has a couple areas that he's going to discuss, and then we can answer questions that you may have.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. On November 14th, we had Solid come out. Is this on? Yeah. So November 14th, we had Solid come out.
Probably want to
Come
get
directly
closer.
to the mic.
Sorry. On November 14th, we had Solid come out and facilitate a training with our staff with the emphasis on customer service and how to deal with difficult individuals. Simultaneously, I also worked with the AEO to create an in-house training geared towards exceptional customer service and the ability to educate our licensees and applicants to help them better understand the BREEZE process and hopes to reducing the amount of repeat callers. We also incorporated telephone doctor learning material as well, and that's going to be facilitated every quarter. And it will be a refresher for current staff and also an initial training for new staff. On October 30th, the automated phone tree was changed to drop calls that have not made a selection from the selections available. And after not making a selection, the call will be dropped. And that has reduced the amount of spam calls and robocalls that tie up our limited phone queue space. So we can reach out to more customers. A survey was also created for the customers that come to the front counter in order to receive direct feedback from our stakeholders. The information is geared to allow us to improve our customer service skills and focus on the problematic areas. We have also discovered a common error with the renewal process caused by licensees selecting the incorrect answer. And this places a hold on the license that cannot be lifted until it is manually removed. So we ran a report and we found over 500 of these license holds, and we have currently removed 407 of them, and the remainder remain deficient. Currently, we're monitoring these errors daily in a much smaller volume. On November 4th, a ticket was created and submitted to have the question changed on the BREEZE website, and we hope to have the change take place during the BREEZE update that's scheduled March 2020. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Do board members have any questions?
Yes, I have a question about the enforcement for the CE audit. Are those cases related to failure to respond timely to the request for information, or failure to have taken the required CEs?
Both.
Both, okay.
Thank you. Any other board members?
Actually, if I may, I'd like to commend the licensing division for the phenomenal work and the outstanding leadership they've had. They've really made some tremendous movements over this past year. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to second that.
Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
And welcome.
Thank you.
So that brings us to the executive committee report and recommendations and possible actions. You have the minutes in the packet. Do you have any questions?
Are you referring to August, this particular date? Are you referring to a particular date?
Either of the two.
August 9th? I'm just trying to make sure I'm referring to the right executive committee minutes.
Yes.
All right, yeah, August 9th. Just an issue that came up, and it also came up in the board meeting minutes about the per diem. I didn't really address it in the board meeting minutes because we've had conversations back and forth about the per diem committee that was created, what happened about the meeting or lack of meeting. And I just want to emphasize, because the record looks to me, when I read it, as if the per diem committee was created and just haphazardly didn't meet and didn't give a report to the executive committee. Again, I want to emphasize that it was not a part of the motion that the per diem committee was supposed to make an early report to the executive committee. And, you know, I personally feel that we weren't on notice to do so. And as a result, we weren't able to give input to the executive committee before they reached their own conclusion without our input. So I just want to say that for the record.
Thank you. Thank you, Cheryl. Any other comments or questions? Alita, did you have one? You look like you were, no?
No, I'm just having a little private moment over here with Cheryl.
Okay. There's no motion on that needed. That brings us to public comment, not on. The September? Yes. Any questions or comments about the report or executive committee report in September?
No.
We did meet October, but it's not here.
Seeing none. Thank you. And then we will go on to public comment on items not on the agenda. The individuals may appear before the board at this time to discuss items not on the agenda. The board may not discuss or take any action on any item raised during the public comment section, except to decide whether to place it on the agenda of a future meeting. Any comments?
Put on mic producers.
If we could have you state your name and title and.
Carrie Wybrew, Director of Nursing, representing Success Education College's Vocational Nursing. And I don't want any action, I just want to give you an update. I was before you all in May this year and gave you a presentation, and I wanted to just give you a brief update about that work that's occurred since then. And following my meeting with you, I met with Oregon Board of Nursing and also the Texas Board of Nursing, and did a presentation also at the California Vocational Nurse Educators. And in January, I'll be meeting with the Missouri Board of Nursing. In September of this year, leaders from ASN, American Nursing Association, also American Organization for Nursing Leadership, Organization for Associate Degree Nursing, the National Council, and National Student Nurses Association met. 50 leaders from across the United States. Half were from our first think tank and half were from new members representation. And also in mid-October, we received IRB approval from Duke University on that survey that I had shared with you when I was last here too. Oregon Board of Nursing released all 93,000 names and contact information to disseminate that survey, which helped us in getting our IRB approval. So we've got preliminary information, but we're from the initial dissemination of the survey, but we haven't made our dissemination of that survey since we've gotten the approval from Duke to the Oregon nurses. But that was the information I wanted to give you as an update. Also, one other little thing. We changed our nursing pillar, one of them, I shared with you that education, knowledge, and values and ethics, what we changed was self-awareness to professional comportment, as the idea being that it isn't just knowledge that we need, and the awareness that what is it that you do about it once you know and you have information, that you act upon this information in a meaningful way as a nurse and how you are with other people. So, that's it.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we're to agenda item 20, suggestions for future agenda items. Individuals may request future agenda items at this time. The board may not discuss or take actions on any matter except to decide whether to place it on the agenda for future meeting. Any board members have any public? Seeing none, that moves us to agenda item 21, adjournment. This meeting is adjourned at, what time are we? 12:46. Thank you. That concludes our meeting.
I bet that's a new record.
I think it is.